Okay, brilliant. All righty, so welcome everybody. We are delighted to welcome Simon Cocozza back for his 4th webinar with the HorseTribe. They've been so incredibly popular, we couldn't resist having him back for a 4th time. This time Simon's going to be talking about roundness beginning in the back, and having had a sneak preview of the slides, I'm really excited about this webinar. Really looking forward to it. So Simon, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you to take over the conversation, but Thea and I will stick around, and if anybody's got questions, please ask them as we go, and Thea and I will try and feed in questions at the appropriate moments. Obviously the webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again to make sure you've heard all of the things that Simon's talked about. So the link will come out in the next couple of days and you'll be able to watch that as many times as you'd like. From a tech point of view, please use a Q&A function for those questions. Just makes it really easy for us to sort through and make sure that we're asking everything that people have wanted to ask. And if you want to change the size between Simon and the slides, you can just move that little grey line that you see on your screen left and right. I think that's the boring bit over with, Simon. It's going to be over to you. So Simon Cocozza, who's author of Core Conditioning for Horses, also a FEI coach, I think that's the right organisation, and has many other accolades to his name. So Simon, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. It's very kind of you. Well, hello everyone, and I hope that you've all got a glass of wine in your hand. And if you're in a part of the world where it's still the morning, go ahead anyway. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about riding a horse on the bit and how to do it properly. So riding a horse on the bit softly and gently is a worthy goal, and it's something that we all pursue. I struggled with it for many years until I found out what the missing ingredients were, and they weren't where I thought. So I thought that I would put together this webinar with some videos and some stills to show you what's going on in the horse and what we can do about it and how I go about having a horse soft and on the bit. Okay. So I think, Heidi, we decided that we were going to go with this.
Simon, you've just frozen. Oh dear, everybody. If people can hear me, I think that they probably can't hear Simon, who's just frozen. Oh, Simon, you're back.
Am I back? Okay.
Yes, you froze there for a moment.
How far did I get?
You just said you were going to. And then I think what the word was, you're going to swipe left or right for me to move the slides on for you.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so we're there. Right, so, well, like a lot of people many years ago, my tack room was full of gadgets and straps and bits, and I would interchange them and use them for different horses, trying to get the outline right. And I thought that if I could put the horse in the right shape, they would somehow get it eventually. Well, I think anyone that's tried that has realized it doesn't work. As soon as you take your strong bit away or your straps away, the horse just flips up to the shape they were in the first place. So it's quite obvious that this is not an issue to do with the head and neck. There's more to it than that. Another aspect is, of course, I came to the conclusion, like I'm sure we all have, is that any use of force is unfair and unethical. So there had to be a better way. And so I'm going to try and explain that to you tonight. So first of all, I'm going to show you what it is for a horse to be on the bit and what it is by definition. So if we move on to the next slide.
We've got the video playing of the beautiful Arab. Is that the right one? Uh-oh. So, oh, Simon, are you there? Oh, hell, we've got something.
Did that work?
We've got the Arab. We've got the Arab on the screen at the moment, Simon. But you cut out a little bit then again.
Okay, that's fine. If you can tell me when the next slide is up,
yeah,
then
sure.
That'll be fine. Okay, yeah. So looking at this horse, okay, isn't he beautiful? What makes him beautiful, apart from the fact that he's really shiny, is the fact that his body is arranged in such a way that he's at his most athletic. Every part of his posture screams movement, elegance, balance, and harmony. And this is what we're looking for. So we need to help our horses find this, this natural athletic frame, hopefully while we're on board and without them being too excited. And it is possible. Okay, so before that, let's move on to the next slide. And we can see what the grown-ups say about being on the bit. Heidi, are we on?
We are. We've
the
got
next
the
slide?
FEI slide. Yeah.
We are.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So as far as the FEI are concerned, the acceptance of the bridle with submissiveness throughout and without any tension or resistance. Now, this could be misinterpreted as some system until the horse doesn't dare resist or doesn't come above the bit anymore. But I think that we ought to read between the lines, because that sentence is a little bit ambiguous. I feel it means to train the horse in such a way that that the acceptance of the bit and is as a result of a lack of tension in the system, because we've trained the horse into being in this posture where it's the most natural and most athletic. So therefore, the easiest path for the horse is to rest gently against our contact. So it must feel right to the horse, otherwise it's false. I think that's essentially the message. Okay, if we could go on to the next slide.
Yeah, it's up.
Okay, so because everything that is happening in the horse will affect its posture, we have to look at its components. It's extremely complicated, of course. If we just have a look at this picture, it's divided into many sections, many moving parts. These are the hardware aspects, the skeleton. And of course, the skeleton, we have a combination of the two working together, both the hardware and the software. And like any system, if something doesn't work properly, none of it works. So this is why we often see horses that aren't going very well. And it's not necessarily that they can't, it's just that some aspect of the system isn't working in harmony. And of course, the software and the hardware must work in harmony with each other. Otherwise, we experience all sorts of problems that we see every day. And not only that, the horse cannot deliver what we want. So, this is where we look. Have we got it up?
3 sections.
I'm going to carry on as if we have. So there's a picture of a horse. Yeah, 3 sections. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the horse from the exterior. I like to divide it into 3 different parts. So you have. Hello.
Hello.
Still on?
You're back. Yeah.
Okay.
Keep just a
All right. So
second.
we're having all sorts of technical fun, aren't we? Okay. So we can divide the horse into 3 sections because they all do a different job. So we have the neck, the torso, and the rear end. We can focus on each one and develop each one because the properties and exercises that help each one are different. Now, and we need all 3 to be working simultaneously and in harmony to function properly. Okay, can we move on to the next slide, please?
Yep.
All right, so this is what's going on inside. So in the neck, we have 7 cervical vertebrae, neck vertebrae. Now, these can work in 3 dimensions. So it's very bendy, as you see with a horse, they can put their head wherever they like. Sometimes we do want them to, sometimes we don't. They can find food, stretch, very, very mobile in the neck. The middle section is the thoracic section, which is the rib cage, which houses the organs. This can laterally. So we have to, this is what gives the horse its sort of articulation, if you like a bendy bus. The third section is the lumbar area, which can round and rotate. So it's an extremely important part of how the horse moves. Often forgotten, and if one doesn't isolate it, tends not to exercise itself. The horse remains at the same flexibility whether it comes to rounding and rotating through the lumbar area through their whole life, unless we focus on it, which I'll show you how to do in a little while. So again, each section moves in a different way, plays a different role, and needs individual attention if we're going to have a system that naturally comes onto the bit. Okay, if we could move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so we've got the other Arab trotting around.
Wonderful. I think actually it's all working now, which is wonderful. Thank you. All right, so let's look at this guy. This horse has fantastic posture. Look carefully how there's a harmony between all the body parts, and that harmony gives this horse agility and adjustability. He naturally rounds his neck, lowers his head as a counterbalance, but the head is weightless as far as the rest of the system is concerned. So in other words, the suspensory mechanisms of the rest of the body allow the head to be completely free. This is one of the elements we're looking for when we ask horse naturally has it. I suspect he's a breeding stallion, so isn't ridden, which probably has something to do with it. But he has excellent posture, excellent balance, and excellent adjustability. And we're going to work on that with our horses. Okay, next, please. Okay, so we're going to look at, is it up? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So we're going to look at a couple of examples of what we don't want to see, but might be familiar, just so that you can train your eye and then your seat to understand what is and isn't happening under you. So this horse, for example, if we look at the front end, rider may feel that the horse is on a bit because the face is in front of the vertical. Could we play that again? Is it on a loop?
It's on a loop.
Great. Okay. So now look at the rider and look at the back. The back is swaying up and down like a seesaw. And the back end of the horse isn't really stretching under, the horse isn't sitting down. So it's rather fragmented with a head bob and a sort of rolling sensation. So this horse isn't used. This is a very good to train your eye to see what happens when the horse isn't fluctuating through the back and flowing. So there's a disconnect between the front end and the back end. Okay, if we look at the next slide.
This one is just a little bit, it's quite grainy when I look at it, so it's probably going to be the same for other people. But we've got a chestnut going along the long side. So he's playing now, Simon.
Okay, great. So the horse's head is static because he's in a double bridle, and the horse has been asked to produce a lot of impulsion, obviously after a lot of intensive training. But if you look carefully, the back isn't moving, just as with the last horse, but here in trot with under higher impulsion. So the limbs are having to stretch forward. So we're having an imbalance between the horse moving through the entirety of the body and them overextending through the limbs. This is not good for the limbs. They're not designed for it, and they often suffer as a result in the long term. So another thing to look out for here in the trot is a horse that, again, isn't moving its back, but is using the limbs a lot. So don't fall for it. Train your eye not to look at the limb movement, but to look at back movement. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So one of the problems is the horse's body wasn't designed to carry the weight of the rider in the first place. The spine, geometry of the skeleton, the head comes up and the limbs separate. And this is it's a bit of a syndrome. And the way we cure it is by obviously conditioning the horse's core, the center of the body, to be able to take the rider's weight without it affecting the skeleton in this way. But we have to bear in mind, for the purposes of this talk, that if the horse has a dipped back, they Hi.
Sorry, Simon, we just lost.
I think I went somewhere for a second. Anyway, am I back?
You are. Oops. You are back.
Great. So what we have to bear in mind, am I back?
Yeah. Yes, you're back now.
Carry on.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have to bear in mind is that if the horse's posture is bad, the horse physically cannot go onto the bit, which is why it's so difficult for the rider and the horse. And it seems to be outside the capacity of that particular situation. So we have to remember that if we're having trouble, it's not necessarily in the horse's mind or the head and neck, it's probably in the back. All right, let's have a look at the back for a second. Next slide, please.
There you go.
So even a slight dipping will cause this syndrome of this changing of the alignment of the spinal column, and therefore changing of the alignment of all the other bones that are attached to it. And that in turn affects all the software, because if the bones aren't at the right angles, then the muscles can't do their job properly. So this is when the horse starts to have all sorts of different coping mechanisms, as we saw or overextension of the limb or crookedness. Okay, next slide, please. So if we look at the horse on the left, this horse is nicely on the bit with the nose in front of the vertical, and everything is lined up. So this is comfortable for the horse. The horse in the middle, what is happening here is the rider, with a desperate attempt to gain control of the horse's body, is applying pressure, rearward pressure on the horse's mouth, and it's putting a little bit of a bend in the spinal column.
Just lost you after the second horse, Simon. Simon, we heard up to the second horse.
Hello, so I went somewhere again there. Am I back?
Yeah, we heard up to the second horse. So you tell, onto the third.
Can you hear me?
Picture. Yeah.
Yeah, it cuts out. Okay. Okay, let's carry on. All right. Okay. So if we look at the picture on the right, we see that the skeletal line of the cervical vertebrae has been broken. The horse has come above the bit, and with the spine aligned like this, the rider can no longer influence the horse. And of course, this is very uncomfortable for the horse, because the energy can't flow from the back to the front and through the back. So again, something we see very often, and it's almost catastrophic for the dynamics of what we're trying to achieve. So rearward pressure on the bit, not a good idea. We need the horse to stretch forward and out to our contact, because everything that we're sitting on is lined up and strong. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so similarly here, we have a horse that is imbalanced in his body. So he's falling forward. As he's falling forward, the back end is being pushed upwards because he can't sit down. And the rider, as an attempt to prevent this from happening, is holding the front end and overstretching the top of the neck. And as the neck is flexible, the face comes behind the vertical. Again, this isn't a problem with the horse, the contact, and it's not a problem with the horse's neck. It's a problem with the horse's overall body balance and how the rider feels they can influence it correctly. Okay, moving on to the next slide. And for these reasons, any attempt to apply more force or coercion to the mouth is a mistake. It won't end well. Yes, one can influence the horse emotionally into being too frightened to run through the bit because of what might happen with a piece of equipment like this, but that's not what it should be about. And it's ultimately ineffective, because a horse under this kind of negative tension will ultimately destroy its body and destroy its mind. So this is not a road to go down. Okay, so let's move on. Next slide, please. So when it comes to the horse's body having a negative effect on a rearward pull from the rider's hand, we get some traditional pressure points. Top of the neck, and the base of the neck, and along the back, of course, processes in the and as that come to me that have poor posture, they have issues in these locations. It's because of the compression of trying to control the horse from the front to the back and not dealing with I think I went somewhere again.
I wondered, should we have a see if we could maybe take a couple of minutes to get the quality of the sound to work? Yeah, you've been listening. Is it cut it? It's
Yeah,
clearer for me than it is for other people.
When it's good, it's absolutely brilliant, and then it just, yeah, we just lose you for a bit. And I wonder if we could take just a 5-minute break and see if we can sort. Can we go back into a practice session and let everyone back in, Heidi? Or
I don't think we can do it in that sense. People, why don't we ask folk how it's going for them? So
yeah,
people, if you obviously Simon's cutting out a little bit, which isn't perfect for everyone's experience. So let us know in the chat how it's feeling for you, and if you're managing to catch enough of the content, and perhaps if it's not working, then we might maybe come back on another day. Simon, what's your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, it's working now.
It is working now.
yeah, when it works, it's absolutely brilliant, and then it just goes.
Sorting itself out now, cutting out, missing lots, frustrating, difficult to hear, not great, keeps cutting out and freezing, difficult to follow. Okay, so we've got quite a lot of people saying they're missing quite a few of the words, and they're frightened of missing the important bits, which obviously I completely understand. Here's a suggestion, Simon. If you turn off your camera, it's probably your internet that's struggling. So maybe if you turn off your camera and trust that I've got the right slides on the screen, then people won't be able to see you, but they will probably be able to hear you more consistently.
Okay, shall I press stop video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'm just thinking, Heidi, shall I stay off as well? Then Simon's got less bandwidth and then it's just you showing in case it's.
See if that helps.
Yeah, we'll do that. Let's give it a go, and then we'll stop in a few minutes and you guys give us feedback again.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. So great. Okay, so we'll pause from where we are. Simon, we've got can you still see the screen of what's showing?
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay, let's try that. Let's go for 5, and if people find it's cutting out again, it's probably easier for you guys to notice than me, because I can obviously see the slides and everything as well. So please just type some more messages and we'll see where we go. But Simon, off you go. I think it might be better.
Okay. All right. So if we could have 11B.
Yeah, there we go.
Lovely. Okay. So the horses that come to me that have postural issues tend to have issues in these particular places. So it's the top of the neck, the base of the neck, the dorsal processes, and the sacroiliac joint behind the lumbar section. I think because when we try and ride a horse on the bit and their posture isn't good, it's these areas that become compressed. So these are things to look out for. Another one of my personal concerns is here. Could we move on to the next slide, 12A?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Here, this shows quite well the rearward action of the bit on the horse's neck. What it does is it seems to lift the very flexible C7, which is the lowest neck vertebra, on its joint where it attaches the pretty inflexible thoracic section. So it's very common that horses get a bit of a pinch where that angle is too upright. You can see it there in the top picture. If we could move on to the next slide.
There we go.
Lovely, thank you. So this one shows very well the angle at the base of the neck vertebrae, where it attaches to the thorax. They're very sensitive vertebrae here. They're covered in nerves. And I think what I find is a horse that doesn't want to keep itself on the bit can often have a compression at the top of this junction. There are little knobbly bits called, they're called articular processes on the vertebra here. And if they touch, the horses really do feel that they've got to extend the neck and push into the contact. So if you find that your horse is trying to get forward with the head and neck, I feel that it may be a pressure point at that location. How do we deal with that? We raise the thorax with exercises to strengthen the thoracic sling, raise the thorax so that angle is no longer as acute. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is an interesting example of a horse with a locked back. So although he looks very impressive and the limbs are moving very well, just like the chestnut we saw earlier, have a look at the rider's seat and hands and their influence on the horse's mouth. Obviously, she's riding in a double bridle, which is making the horse fixed in the front end. And as a result, the back is very hollow and she actually leads the saddle every stride quite significantly. So this is something to bear in mind, is that we don't want a false outline. We don't want to fix it and we don't want to force it. We want it to develop naturally from the core. Okay, next slide, please. Another thing to look for, 14A.
Oh, sorry, there we go.
That's all right. Okay, another aspect is we want a horse to be like a bendy bus. So we have to develop lateral flexion in the thoracic section, in the rib cage. So we have to develop the bend in the back. When the horse can't bend in the back, what they do is they fall round corners by just throwing their weight to the inside. This again shows a lack of flexibility or a lack of strength in the horse's back under the saddle. Next slide, please. Similarly, when we're riding a horse and they're falling out of the shoulder, so rather than falling into the turn, they're falling out of the turn, it's because they haven't got enough bend and their weight isn't distributed 25% on each foot. So they're losing their balance and falling outwards. Nothing we can do, no amount of pressure that we apply to the mouth is going to solve this if this is a result of the horse's lack of flexibility and strength through the core. Okay, next slide, please. So essentially, our job is to create uniform flexibility through the back and deal with the lateral and longitudinal suppleness of the horse as a priority if we want them to be soft into our contact and on the bit naturally. Next slide, please. Another aspect to look out for is when the horse, as you saw with the chestnut horse earlier, when the horse is overextending the limbs and using the limbs to propel themselves without the back being in action. With overextension of the limbs, the joints can't take it. They're only designed to take a certain amount of the pressure and stress of working in this way. And so if they are asked to overextend or have too much load, the joints tend to complain. They inflame, wear out too quickly. So it's something to also to look out for if you see horses that do have limb issues and swellings and seem lame. That could be from the inflammation. It could possibly be from the fact that they're not working correctly over the back. Okay, next slide, please. And of course, taking it to its full extent, when the horse's back is dipped and it's dipped sufficiently, the vertical processes on the spine can touch. And this is, of course, what we call kissing spine. It's frighteningly common, but it only takes a small amount of dipping and poor posture from the thoracic and lumbar vertebrae to create a touching, a bone-to-bone contact on the vertical processes. So again, another thing to take into account when we're talking about the horse's flexibility and athleticism is what is the back is doing, because this can have quite a severe consequence, which anyone who's been through it will tell you is very difficult to come through. It's possible, but it's tricky. Okay, next slide, please. So the posture is controlled by the core. If the core is strong, the limbs are arranged correctly, the spine is at its optimal angle, and the head and neck will naturally come onto the bit. So our work really is focused on developing the core so the core is strong and supple, and the horse is confident using the core. So it's got is released through the core, has a good range of motion through the core, and is strong enough to create impulsion eventually. Okay, next slide, please. And when we do have that, we will have a horse that can lift the front end because they can sit. If we're talking about the average horse of, say, 600 kilos, there's a lot of weight involved. So, of course, when the body isn't behaving properly, the forces are thrown in all sorts of different directions. And if we want a light contact, we must have a light front end. And to have a light front end, the horse has to take its own weight by bringing its hind end underneath the body and sitting slightly. So this is our goal. All right, so we're going to move on now into what you can do. So I'll just talk about what we're looking to achieve. So I prefer to work a horse through 3 different stages of its training. The release stage, which this picture shows, where we teach the horse to be extremely flexible on the top line and stretched. So that involves a lot of stretching exercises. They're very simple and taken, and I'll show you them later. Taken through to their fullest extent, the horse can become like a dancer, extremely supple and extremely long in the top line. And of course, the benefits of this are a realignment of the skeletal system, and particularly the spinal column. Next slide, please. The second stage, the range of motion and coordination stage, is about asking the horse to learn to trust his body again, particularly if he's been compromised in the past, and use his body to its fullest extent, in as far as stretching the limb, placing weight, and shifting his balance confidently, elegantly. And the third stage, next slide, please, is putting it all together under impulsion, where we connect the 3 different parts of the body that we've individually worked on, and now supple in a longitudinal and lateral way, and we connect these elements with impulsion, and then we have an absolutely superb ride. And the thing to remember at this point is this is achievable for all horses and all riders, because using particular exercises that aren't complicated, they will bring these qualities to your horse's body, and then your horse will become easier to ride. And being easier to ride, you can train the horse more efficiently, and you can both enjoy the process as well as achieve more. Okay, next slide, please. So let's look more closely at the release phase. Now, I like to use vaults. Vaults are small circles. It's just a posh name for small circles. But I like to use vaults to create not only a release of the top line, but a release of the outside of the horse's body by having a flexion. So what I find is that by riding horses at a very, very low impulsion, a stretching impulsion, if you like, with lots of inside flexion, it aligns the spine in such a way that the horse instinctively stretches forward, down, and out. And that's what we're looking for with this exercise. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So any compression in the lower picture that we may have in the horse's back, and believe me, most do, it will lift the back and stretch it out, and gradually any tension will release. Any psychological aspects that may have come along where the horse is maybe not wanting to use the back because there may have been some pain in the past, that will all disappear as we put the horse's back under traction by working the head long and low with a lot of flexion. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is a question I often get asked. Working the horse's nose very, very low, does it put the horse on the forehand? The answer is no. And the reason is because they are equipped with this, the nuchal ligament, which runs from ears to tail. And the beautiful thing about the nuchal ligament is it's designed to lift the horse's thorax while the horse's head is down. I think this is because the horse needs to be alert and ready to move quickly away from a potential predator while eating, which they have to do a lot. They have to eat for 18 hours a day in the wild. So this was necessary to enable the horse to be in balance in that very first escape stride. It may be the difference between life and death anthropologically. So what happens is when the horse's head is very, very low, the nuchal ligament tightens up And as you can see in the little yellow arrows there, it's attached to the cervical vertebrae. So the lower the horse's head gets, the higher the rib cage gets between the shoulder blades. This allows the horse to bring its back up and sit a little bit more efficiently. So, and thank God it's there, because without that, it wouldn't be anything like as easy. Okay, next slide, please. So in essence, this exercise that I'm going to show you releases the back to remove all tension, because without a released back, we can't bend. Without bend, we can't ask the horse to round. Without a round horse, the horse can't sit, so we can never achieve balance. So we must remove tension as a priority, and this exercise does it very well. Next slide, please. Another aspect of this exercise is we use a lot of flexion in the neck and we ask for a lot of bend in the back. Why do we do that? It's not just because of the software that we do need to stretch all the muscles, obviously, just like a dancer does, but also because a lot of horses are misaligned in the spinal column. This is rather extreme with this graphic, but most horses will have somewhat this configuration because they are not symmetrical. So with the asymmetry in such a long spinal column comes misalignments. Sometimes they can be off to the left in front and off to the right behind and all sorts of things. So by putting the outside of the body under traction, by having a lot of flexion and a lot of bend, this gradually aligns the skeletal system, so we remove all the kinks from the spinal column. Very, very important, very useful, and also you'll find out very easy. All right, so this is my favorite exercise to perform this task. It's the one I start horses with generally when under saddle. It is the core release vaults. So as you can see, I've got a couple of blocks. They're about 10 meters, so sort of 30 feet apart. And I'm simply doing small circles with lots of flexion, changing the rein as I go between the two. Now, what is important here is to move the seat with the horse, because we want to encourage the horse to lift his back into our seat. The other aspect is the horse will occasionally, because of the flexion and the alignment that this gives to the vertebral column, the horse will often try to stretch forward and down. So one of the key things to do is when we feel the horse attempting or beginning to attempt to stretch forward, allow the reins to slip between our fingers. Hello. Lost you for a second there, but I think we're back.
Yes, we're back.
So by simply riding this figure of 8 with lots of bend and lots of flexion in the neck, and every time the horse wants to stretch down, we allow the head to go down. We invite the horse to stretch his nose to the ground. He gradually starts to release the outside of the body and the top line. Okay, if we could next slide, please. So it's very simple. 2 circles on a figure of 8. I do it for about 10 or 15 minutes until the horse starts to really stretch into the contact. And then I move on to next slide, please. In a very, very slow trot. So if your horse is healthy and you just want more flexibility and want the horse to be softer on the contact, I would spend about 5 or 10 minutes in the walk, just getting a nice feel, setting the ABCs for the horse and showing him that you're prepared to allow him to stretch all the way to the floor, and then pick up a very, very slow jog trot. I prefer to sit because it's more comfortable and more predictable for the horse, and also invites the horse to lift his back into your body weight, which when you're rising is not so easy for the horse to predict. And again, continue to work the bend and the flexion and invite the horse to stretch out by relinquishing the contact whenever the horse seems to want to go forward and down and out. Okay, next slide, please. So this is what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve a complete crescent, the longest path between the hind end and the nose. So the back will be fully decompressed. It is no different from a dancer being able to sit on the floor and put his or her head on the knees. It is a level of flexibility of the top line that I think is not optional if we're going to put the horse under impulsion, because they need to have this range of motion through the spine to achieve a softness without ever blocking and tensing up, because they've met the limit of the extension of their musculature on the top line, or they've met bone-to-bone contact or any discomfort in the spinal column. Next slide, please. Now, this isn't new. This is an image from LDV12, the German Equestrian Training Manual from 1937. It's all been done before. We just have to re-remember it. So the nose to the floor brings the back end underneath and lifts the back. It's just the way they're designed, and it's perfectly natural. Okay, next slide, please. So the next exercise I'd like to show you is one of my favorites. That's, can we go back one, Heidi?
Yeah.
No, I've got 23A.
Oh, which one's this? Sorry, Simon, I might.
I think that's no, a forward one.
I think we might have missed one, sorry.
Have we missed one?
I think we might have. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
All right, no problem. All right, so if we go forward one, Heidi?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next exercise I'd like you to practice at home is rein back.
Oh,
now, rein back is immensely useful because it teaches the horse to sit. Now, often in classical dressage, what we try and do is on the go, try and drive the back end into the front end, so the driving aids into the restraining aids, in the hope that this will lift the back. So here's a video of the horse doing rein back. And what we want him to do is to lower the head, lift the back, and sit behind, as you can see this horse is doing. Heidi, could you go back a slide? Could you tell me what you see?
So we've got the skeleton one.
This is fun, isn't it?
Or the one after
Great
is
when
the,
soon goes wrong.
the one after is the one with
Skeleton. That's great.
that one, yeah.
Well, the skeleton one will do.
Okay, there you go. We've got that one up now.
Hello. Okay, right, that's good. So the rein back is trot. It's diagonal pairs. So what happens is, as the horse starts to reverse, they have to negotiate a rebalancing that they do by choice. Now, it's important to remember at this point that we can't actually change the horse's posture. All we can do is show them an exercise that when they do it, they adjust their own posture to cope with that exercise, and as a result, make a permanent improvement to the way they're carrying themselves. So if you look at this graphic, it explains rein back extremely well. So as we're walking backwards or trotting backwards, the horse sits, rotates the pelvis underneath his body weight so he can bring his hind legs underneath the central mass, and that pushes upwards in the back, upwards into the rider. So as we rein back, and I like to do it for 1 or 2 steps, then 5, and then 10, then 15, then 20, and then 25, because after 20, they really get the hang of it. So it's worth practicing it up until that point. I find you end up sitting on a ball of a horse, which I then go straight into trot. I'll do the first 1 or 2 transitions into walk, but straight into trot, and they remain sitting. They remain sitting with a lifted back and with a very light front end. So it's extremely valuable exercise without the stress or pressure of driving back end into front end. Okay, could we go forwards a slide, please? Okay, so as the horse sits, they naturally transfer the body weight from the front end to the back end. Naturally, they're probably standing still, having 75% of their weight on the front end. As they rein back, they'll transfer that, have 75% on the back end, and this alleviates weight on the front. So the thoracic sling, which you can see here, can lift and raise itself between the shoulder blades, making the front end lighter and the head and neck lighter. So they will have less force placed down the neck onto the contact because the front end is carrying less weight. Okay, next slide, onto the video, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my horse doing this. He was learning this at the time. So you can see the steadiness, talking him through it, both legs behind, back. So both legs where you would put to ask for canter, a seat which is moving with the horse, very light fingers, only pulsing with the fingers, because we want the horse to stretch forward, down, and out in the process of rein back. Now, when they get very good at it, they can rein back with their nose lower than the knee. And it's actually a beautiful thing to see with the back so round. And then when you trot away, it'll give you a feeling that you've never felt before. Okay, moving on. Next slide, please. So one of my favorite exercises, turn on the forehand. Now, this is very, very important exercise because it works so many parts of the horse's body. Now, you have everyone should really teach their horse to do this exercise very, very well. And of course, you start with one step, then develop it to 3, then quarter turns, half turns, and full turns. So what we're looking for is if you look at the picture, the horse to step under the body with the inside hind leg, take the weight, transfer it from that leg which was off the ground onto the ground, release the pressure off the leg which was weight bearing, and move sideways. I'll show you some video in a minute. What this does is this rotates the pelvis so the horse sits more. It also puts a rotational force on the lumbar area. And if you remember, we talked about earlier, the lumbar area is the gearbox of the horse. This works that part of the horse's body in such a way that no other exercise does. So it creates this rotational force behind the saddle, allowing the horse to swing through the pelvis in all directions. So it's invaluable. And the better the horse can execute this exercise, the better they ride. Every time you do this exercise correctly, the horse feels better immediately. So it's something it's worth practicing. Next slide, please. So here we see the back end that we've been talking about. So you have the lumbar, 6 lumbar vertebrae, L1 to L6. And again, these need to rotate. So we're not sitting on these. This is behind the saddle. And these control the angle of dangle of the pelvis. So whatever our pelvis isn't doing is being controlled by the lumbar area and the muscles that surround it. So turnabout the forehand is your direct line to lumbar flexibility and control and strength. And I can guarantee that most horses are seriously underpowered in this area because, of course, riding them in a straight line and even lateral work doesn't activate this a part of the body. It doesn't isolate it to the extent that you get the full range of motion and strengthening and release. And remember, for a horse, it's all about body confidence. If they feel that they can use a part of their body because it's strong, flexible, and won't hurt, they will. When they do, you'll feel it. So what we have to do is isolate these areas and develop them, and the horse will just give us what they can. All right, next slide, please. I'll assume that's moved on. So what we're looking for very simply here is pitch and yaw from the pelvis, from turnabout the forehand. Thank you. Okay, and next slide. So here's turnabout the forehand in action. All right, so we can see the crossing inside hind in front of outside hind. You can see the pelvis twisting. There's a yaw and a pitch and a roll. So the lumbar area is working very, very hard. This engages the iliopsoas core muscles, the multifidus, the abdominals, as well as creating all sorts of bonus flexibility in the back end, because the horse has to be able to take their body weight, move across confidently, replace the weight on the new limb, and then keep moving. So it is a sort of orchestra of lateral Lovely. Okay, next slide, please. Sorry about that. I think I disappeared for a while. Never mind. Okay, next.
So we've got turn of forehand with him going long and forward, down and out.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, so here what we can do is once we've taught the horse to stretch in the top line and they can work forward, down and out, we can train them to do turnabout the forehand in a long and low position. So if you look at the video, I'll start in a normal turnabout the forehand, which this horse is quite efficient at, and then gradually ask him to stretch forward and release the front end. Now, what this does is this puts a lot of traction on the top line and on the outside of the body, while the inside hind is pushing underneath the body. So this creates an incredible amount of flexibility in the horse's spine and connects your inside hind to your outside shoulder in a very soft and flexible manner. Okay, and next slide, please. All right, so if your horse can't be ridden, I use this exercise, which is the Giravolta lunge. It's lunging on the same circle that we would do the figure of 8 and holding the horse in a shoulder in. Now, what this does is this does the same alignment that we can do when we're riding, but it's a little bit more efficient because we haven't got our body weight on the horse's back, preventing it from lifting and activating. So if we could go to the next slide. So when we bring the horse's shoulder and head and neck to the inside of their quarters, we get this magical core release alignment where the spinal column drops into place, so the head can then drop. Once the horse learns how to do this, they never forget. It's very natural for them. Obviously, the grazing position is natural, so we can create that reflex and show them where it is so they can then give it to us when we're riding. Next slide, please. And then we'll get this lovely lifting of the front end and lowering of the back end. So all these exercises will give you this in your horse. And this is I think it's a wonderful graphic about how we want the horse to start redistributing their weight. Next slide, please. So on the lunge, we're looking for the revolved triangle, which is, if you've ever tried yoga revolved triangle, it's extremely difficult. I can't do it. But that's what we're going for with the horse's body. And if we go on to the next slide, I'll show you some video.
Okay, we've got the video
okay.
On the right.
You only lose me for a second there. That's not bad. Okay, so here we are. So this is a horse that's nice and flexible on the lunge, on the Giravolta. So he's learned to stretch and he's learned to bend and flex. So he's very supple in the top line and very supple on the exterior of his body. So he's got a very, very good now weight distribution between the four limbs. And if we go on to the next, please. When they get confident at a working pace, we go on to a medium, or somewhere between a working and a medium pace on a larger circle. So we start to introduce the toning aspect, the muscle development. So we're retaining release, we're retaining coordination and range of motion. And only then do we start to add a little bit of power. And the power is what connects the part. Lovely. Okay, so again, because I think I cut out there. So we release, then we teach the horse to coordinate the range of motion, and only then do we add power. So here the horse is learning to put a little bit of impulsion into the trot, but nevertheless staying relaxed, staying flexed, staying extended with the top line. And this horse will ride so softly on the bit that is an absolute pleasure. Everything he does comes gently up through the back into the rider. He wasn't like this to start with, but because of these exercises, this horse is absolutely magnificent to ride. If we could move on to the next slide. And then we develop it through to the canter. Again, he's teaching himself at this point because he knows how he can balance himself correctly by altering his own posture. And if you take anything away from tonight, it's we teach our horses to teach themselves how to balance themselves by providing them with exercises, which are in fact learning opportunities as well as conditioning aspects for their body to then allow them to produce it for us. Okay, I'm so sorry about all the breaks in the communication now. I think I live in the middle of nowhere. Next slide, please. So before we go on to the Q&A, if any of you need help with any of these exercises, please don't hesitate to contact me through my Facebook page, Core Conditioning for Horses. We can help people online, wherever you are in the world. And if you're in England, next slide, please. Please come to the Top Thorn Arena on Sunday, the 7th of May. All day, we'll be demonstrating with all sorts of horses and showing you what we're doing with them. All sorts of different types of horses with all sorts of problems. And also, we're going to bring along some horses that have been doing this work for a year and 2 years, and you can see what difference they've made in their posture. Lovely. Thanks, guys. We made it through. Am I still online?
We are still online, and we did a great job. Thank you. So I think turning your video off there, Simon, really helped. I'm going to stop sharing the slides now. And I think if you turn your camera on, it should be okay to come back. So give it a go, and then we'll go through and ask lots of questions that we've got.
I'll stay off and let you, so that we reduce
as the whole thing grinds to a halt.
Have you got your camera back on? We can't see you yet. Anyway, right, Simon, we have got a number of questions, so I'm going to ask those questions. I'll read them out to you, and you can kick off for us. So first question from Carolyn came right at the beginning. So I have a wonderful former two-star eventer on loan. He was retired at 9 because of issues with his back and hocks. I've been told not to school him as this will cause further damage. Is that correct? It sounds odd to me.
You know, I think that the knee-jerk reaction when you get issues is to not work the horse. I've not necessarily found that this is the best option. I think that gentle exercises for the back and to improve posture can actually take pressure off limbs that are a little bit overstressed. So it's very difficult without seeing the horse, but I would do flexibility, range of motion, releasing exercises, the ones that you've seen here, not so much the trot work, but the walk work, the turnabout, the forehand, the vaults in walk, a lot of in-hand work. You can do rein back in hand fantastically, turnabout the forehand in hand, and then just see how it goes, monitor it. I tend to work like that, where I'll take a horse that has a number of different issues. I'll work the back, work the flexibility. You can see how inflexible the horse is quite easily by what they can't do. So after you do some flexibility and range of motion, exercises in the top line, you can. Everyone's just frozen.
We'll lose it. Should we turn the videos off again, Simon?
Yeah, maybe turn yours off as well. Let's see if that works.
Let's see if I can turn something. All right, I think I'm able to turn your video off, so I'm going to do that. There we go. So Simon, your video's off, but you're still with us.
Oh, okay.
So you were explaining some gentle exercises, range of motion, walk mostly for this horse, and then check how he's going. Oh, have we lost him completely?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you again now. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, in hand range of motion work, turnabout the forehand, rein back, shoulder in, and then from the saddle, again, rein back, turnabout the forehand, leg yield. You're going for a lot of flexion through the neck and bend through the back, because only then can the horse lift the back, rearrange the skeleton, and maybe relieve the pressure on those limbs. I would suggest that when we do see limb issues, unless there's been some blunt trauma or it's just overused, that it's probably rooted in a postural issue. The problem with limbs is they're only designed to work on one specific plane. And if the horse's back isn't working correctly, they are overstressed. So you can do a lot of repair to a horse that has seemingly tired limbs by working the back.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got two questions here related to bits. First one from Carol is, what bits would you recommend for a young starter? And the second from Samantha is, why is my horse having bit wear with his teeth? So I don't know if you want to start with one of those.
Okay, interesting. Well, I think the softer the better, because what you're trying to do is, as we talked about in the presentation, you're trying to create the perfect circumstances for the horse to be light in the mouth. And it's probably best to start that way. So I use happy mouths. I try not to use metal. And certainly when it, sorry, what was the second question?
Why is my horse having bit wear with his teeth? I'm assuming it means his teeth.
That's a good question. Well, as long as the dentist has signed the horse off, it's possibly that the horse is triangulating. Now, horses that are a little bit stiff or weak, stiff and weak look the same. They triangulate, so they bring their quarters to the inside, more so on one rein than the other. And then they tend to twist or tilt the head and neck and pressurize one side of the bit more than the other. So again, flexibility and range of motion through the back should help.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Our next question, there seems to be different ideas as to how much a horse can bend laterally under the saddle area, brackets rib cage. To your thoughts?
I think that just like a seesaw, at the fulcrum, there doesn't appear to be that much movement. But at the end of the seesaw, at the seat, there's a lot of movement. So although there isn't a lot of flexibility, lateral flexibility, and that's the only flexibility there is, you still need it. So it's to whatever extent that horse can bend through the back. And of course, we're not forcing it. We're just creating exercises that extend the musculature on the outside of the body so that the thorax can start to bend as much as the horse feels free to allow it. But even if it's a small amount, over 18 vertebrae, that's a lot of bend. And it's crucial to the rest of the mechanism.
Great stuff. Thank you. A question from Kay. She says, it might be the video, the way the video is playing, but the turn on the forehand seemed very quick. Mine tend to be quite measured. Is that wrong?
No, I think it depends on the day. I mean, sometimes I'm asking the horse to be to have a little bit more impulsion, a bit more skippy, a bit more intent. That I find has a different effect on the horse's body. It makes them slightly quicker with that hind limb. If you're going for range of motion, then you want long and slow. So whatever your horse feels happy providing, but just build it gradually. With all these exercises, what I do is I tend to work the horse at the top of its comfort zone every day. So if they're not having a very good day, I won't ask them to produce a lot. But if they're having a good day, I'll say, come on, okay, let's go for it today. Let's try really hard. Let's do it with a little bit more power, a little bit more intent. So there is no black and white. It's all gray. So you have to judge the situation on it, on how your horse feels on that particular day and follow through.
Perfect. Great advice. Thank you. Another question specifically about the exercises does from Karen, does backing up a horse in hand on a slight incline bring benefit?
I've heard of this before. I'm not exactly sure. I do find that if I want the horse to take the weight behind, it probably doesn't help if the weight is being thrown forward by an incline. But I haven't experimented with it a lot. It could have its benefits. Just from my perspective, biomechanically, it possibly doesn't do what we're trying to achieve here, which is get the horse to sit and lighten the front end voluntarily. Because of course, as soon as you take the incline away, you probably lose the benefit.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Right, a couple of specifics based on the exercises. So Helen's asked, what's the best way to teach the horse to stretch on the lunge, please?
Right. Well, you see, the best way to teach the horse to stretch is to align the spine. We can't really teach the horse to stretch, to do anything. We can only encourage them to do it by presenting them with an exercise which allows them to pursue that instinct. So by creating a sort of shoulder in angle on the lunge, or shoulder fore, any angle that means the nose is to the inside of the shoulder will encourage the spine to be aligned to the extent that the horse will naturally stretch the head and neck forward and down. And then it's a question of alleviating the contact pressure very slightly to positively reinforce the stretch. Another thing to do when you're lunging is to make sure that you keep the thorax, the belly, to the outside of the nose. So you have to point the lunge whip at the horse's side, where your leg will be when you're riding, to keep that rib cage out. This is to put traction on the outside of the body. And again, this will align the spine, and the horse will just naturally stretch.
And having been to some of your clinics, Simon, it's quite incredible. They choose to, don't they? Which is, really unexpected, I guess, if you've never tried your methods before.
Yeah, I think it's one of those odd things. I think it's because it's natural, but it's not an angle that we'd naturally instinctively do. No. I mean, I found it by accident. Yeah. But it just sort of pops out. I think one of the reasons is, as I showed in some of those slides earlier, is the horse has often not got perfect posture, either laterally or vertically. So by creating this sort of shoulder fore, shoulder in angle, it forces the spinal column into alignment, where the horse won't try himself. We won't naturally put them there. But when we do, the path of least resistance for the spine is to extend.
Yeah.
And it's absolute magic. It's a lifesaver. You
could almost see the horse smiling, go, "Oh, that's lovely, thank you."
Yes.
Question from Kay, sorry. You mentioned about length of time for doing figure of 8 in walk and trot. How much of what would be a good new style of work can a horse take before over tiring them? So I think it's if this is new to the horse, what should you be doing to start with? I think that's the question.
Okay, that's a really good question. Of course, they're all different, but what I tend to do when I'm starting horses with these particular exercises is I assume nothing. So I tend to just give them an introduction to each exercise for about 5 minutes in the beginning of each session, in walk, and just see how they cope. They'll be more talented at some of the movements than others, and so I'll probably develop those quicker. And again, each day, probably extend the amount of time that I'm spending in each exercise rather than increase the intensity. And when they've really got the hang of it, then start increasing intensity. Because remember, we want to keep them calm. We need them in a happy place. We need them open and listening. So we don't want to push them too hard, but we do need them to try. So it's all about your relationship and keeping the relationship respectful and not forceful, yet nevertheless exciting them and motivating them into trying these movements. And in a week or so, you'll see all sorts of improvements, I promise.
Fantastic, thank you. Again, another one asking a little bit more detail. So on the circle from the ground, when you add canter on the lunge, do you start on the larger circle and come in as they get stronger, or start on the 6-meter circle and work your way out? Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I wouldn't do the canter work on anything less than a 10-meter circle, so that would be 33 feet. When it comes to the giravolta, that's the corrective exercise. I would start at a walk on sort of a 7 or 8 meter circle, and then work up to bring them into a 6, and then go to a jog trot. It is tight, but remember, we're doing it when they're calm and very, very slow and very, very relaxed. So if you're on a good surface, it's not a problem. So yeah, as a general rule, start big and make smaller.
Fabulous, thank you. Right, where should we go next? Right, so Beth says, on the turn on the forehand, my pony's crossing behind isn't as great as your video example. Will this come in time? And that's from someone who's been to one of your clinics before, Miranda Dunconnie, apparently. So
hello, Miranda.
So will this come in time? Yes.
Okay. Now this is an important point. Okay, so horses tend not to put a lot of effort in unless there's a reason. So if your turnabout forehand is a little bit lazy, and sometimes they are, probably historically there's a reason for it, a little bit stiff, maybe concerned that it might hurt. But if they're given the all clear and we're working hard at it, if it remains lazy, I tend to just use a stick behind my inside leg and start tapping if they're not really crossing with intent. You have to feel the horse is trying. So I just go tap, 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 tap if they're a bit slow. And then when they pick up a leg and try the inside hind and try a little bit harder to stretch a little bit quicker and a little bit further underneath their body, I stop tapping immediately. And that, with a few repetitions, and your horse will start to do it with just a little bit more fluidity and, you know, enthusiasm. They've got to have enthusiasm.
Fantastic, thank you. We've got a question here from Kezia, which is something that you've taught me as well. So with young horses, is it best to start teaching the forward, down and out from on board or from the ground? Having read your book, I've started trying the forward, down and out from the ground, but it's difficult to indicate to her what I'm trying to ask her, and indeed to reward her to indicate when she's got it right. She's 3, so I've just backed her, and I wasn't sure whether to try it in ridden or in hand first.
No, and see, that is a really good question, because of course, when they're that age, you can't really, you would have to teach them the lunging skills first before you could teach them to stretch, which of course is possible. And I've done that in the past and it's worked very, very well. So if you've got a horse that you want for competition, I would say teach her to lunge and then teach her to do forward, down and out stretch giro volta in trot. If it's a horse that has a little bit of stiffness, an older horse, then and knows how to lunge, you can use either. The benefits of being on board is you can have just a little bit more control in showing them where you want to go, because if the lunging isn't there, then it's very difficult to hold the shoulder in angle for sufficient time for the skeletal system to extend and for the horse to stretch. At least if the horse isn't very good on the lunge, but is adequate when ridden, the figure of 8 should be enough to teach the horse to stretch into forward, down and out.
Fantastic, thank you. We've got a couple more, so we're running over a little bit, but let's have them anyway. So it's from Cynthia. My OTTB has kissing spine. I've been reading your book and I'm implementing some of these techniques. I'm assuming that these exercises should be done on the lunge question. So it's similar to the last one.
I think if your horse has kissing spine, you have to go through a particular chain of events to treat the horse properly. I think, I mean, that's another webinar, but I certainly would follow the veterinary advice, limit the amount of discomfort the horse is suffering if you're attempting to do a rehabilitation. I would start and continue and do most of the work on the lunge, because if the horse has bones in the back that are touching, you don't want to be sitting on them, because you're just getting in the way and causing as much of a problem as you're trying to solve. So yes, it would be done on the lunge.
Great stuff.
Primarily.
Thank you, Simon. Fantastic. And a question from Samantha. Do you need any more horses for your demo in Suffolk in May?
Yeah, we're always looking. Actually, if Samantha, if you're interested and you think that your horse can contribute something, that would be great. If you get in touch with Becky at who's organising it, I think on the poster there.
Yeah,
she'll have a look at a bit of video and see if we can slot you in if it's of use. Thank you very much for the offer.
There we go, and I'll just pop that back up there so you can see that in order to contact if you like. Right, have we got any?
Oh, that's great.
I think that's all of the questions for now. So if anybody's got any questions, we've got time for one more if you want to have a quick type. And in the meantime, Simon, just to say a huge thank you. That's been absolutely awesome as always. Oh, we've got a question. I knew there would be. Could you let us know how to inquire about online lessons? So I think that's best through your Facebook page, is it, Simon?
Yeah, it is. I think the second from last picture has some details on it. And yeah, through my Core Conditioning for Horses Facebook page, just message us. We can set that up anywhere in the world and help you if you're stuck with any aspect.
Absolutely. So that's Core Conditioning for Horses on Facebook. Easy to find there. Quick mention, when are you coming to Hampshire? Says Julie.
Oh, I'm not sure if I have a clinic due in Hampshire, but if you want me to come, message me and I'll come down. It's not far.
Absolutely. You do travel and do clinics around the country, don't you? So there are potential opportunities. Are you doing any more demos in other parts of the country? So I know Simon comes regularly to Shropshire and also to Cheshire, I think. Where else do you go, Simon?
Yeah, so we have a demo in on the 7th of May at the Topthorne Arena in Suffolk. And if you get in touch with Becky at Ashton Equestrian Centre, she can help you with booking. That's on my Facebook page if you have a look there. I do some clinics in the UK, do a lot of clinics in the States. So if you're in America and you'd like me to come, I can possibly sort of drop in. Some around Europe. So yeah, if you want some lessons, let me know where you are and I'll see if I can fit you in.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Oh gosh, we've got requests coming in from all over now. I think we'll have to not answer all of those individually. Sorry, folks.
Oh, just send them to me.
I'll send them to you. I'll send them to you, and we can send a list round to people of where you are regularly, and they can maybe get in touch. That would be awesome. So thank you so much, Simon. As always, that's been fabulously insightful and really, really useful, and just so many things that we can all take away and do with our horses. So thank you so much. Just got a few things to mention in terms of the next few weeks, who's coming up and at HorseTribe webinars. Next Tuesday, we've got Hannah Briggs, who's an equine vet, talking about buying a new horse or pony, that complete nightmare that is. That's the vet's perspective. She's going to particularly also be talking about behaviour of the horse whilst you're trying them. So linking back into Sue Dyson's ridden horse pain ethogram. We're also going to be having Jason Webb come back. Jason Webb's a horse trainer and starts a lot of horses and also helps solve problems. And this time he's going to be talking about navigating obstacles successfully, things like ditches, water, big traffic, big pieces of traffic, etc. And then on the 23rd of March, which is a Thursday, so a slight change there, we've got Steph Croxford, the Grand Prix dressage rider, giving us some dressage tips from a pro that will apply to everyday riders rather than pros. So that's what's coming up. So I think that's all for today. Let me just check if there's any other questions we need to answer right now. I think that's everybody covered. We'll get back to people who are looking for to go to various different locations for clinics. So lots of messages here. Simon saying thank you for a really informative evening and some really useful exercises nicely explained. So thank you, Simon, once again for your splendidness.
Shall we see your face?
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Heidi. And thanks everyone for joining in. I'm so sorry about the internet connection. I live in the middle of nowhere. That's probably what the problem is.
Let's see your face one more time. If we all stay quiet, you might be able to wave. There you go.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you for coming.
Wonderful. You take care. We'll speak to you soon.
Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.